You're listening to Finding Fortitude, a podcast that aims to help former athletes take good care of their minds and bodies through sustainable, evidence-based health habits. I'm your host, Dr. Tori Williams, a physical therapist, coach, and fellow former athlete who is ready to be part of the change in healthcare and who is on a mission to learn and share about all things health and well-being so that you can be equipped with the knowledge and tools to live your best life. As a reminder, nothing shared on this podcast should be considered medical advice. Let's get started. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Finding Fortitude. Today, I have a super special guest with me who I have the pleasure of calling my friend and former teammate, Miss Jo Koons. Although these days, I just tend to call her Coach for obvious reasons, which we will discuss further in just a minute. But I'm so incredibly grateful to have Jo in my life and now to have her here on my podcast. Feels very surreal. And I have an insane amount of respect and admiration for her. I cannot wait for you all to meet her. We're going to dive a little bit into her story, what it was like for her going from a small town athlete to a Division I collegiate athlete, and now finally to a Division I collegiate softball coach, which I'm honestly not at all surprised about. I have zero reservations. It just makes sense. And yeah, I'm super excited. So let's dive into it. Without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Coach Jo Koons.
Hey, everybody. Tori, thanks for having me. You went and used my full government name there for a minute. That was odd.
Just had to make you feel like this was really official and not, just a casual conversation between two friends.
All right. Sure.
Well, before we dive into like your current role and all the cool stuff you're doing right now, which is so exciting, do you mind giving the listeners a little bit of background information about you and your athletic background and journey?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in a small town in Northern California, Chico. And I was honestly just blessed that I had older siblings. I have an older brother and an older sister, and we're 7 and 9 years apart. So there was always this like big gap, and I wanted to do everything they did, and I wanted to win. I think, I say it all the time in sport, like, competitiveness like creates your culture and what you want to be. And so you're always going to get better from the people around you just because you're making each other better. Iron sharpens iron. And, my older brother was obviously older, so he was always better, and I wanted to beat him. So I was fortunate enough to be able to play every sport known to mankind. I was too active. My parents had no idea what to do with me. So I did all the things. I swam, I played volleyball, I ran cross country, I played tennis for a little bit, I played softball, basketball, you name it, I tried it, except for soccer because, that's just the worst.
We have no foot coordination around here. None of that.
I'm going to be honest. It's just this concept of like you work so hard to kick the ball to one side, and then in one kick, it's on the other side. Just really, really is a downer. I figured I just needed to pick the hardest sport that I wanted to play, and that was softball. The game with the most failure. I mean, you're literally trying to hit a round ball with a batted object, but it was challenging. And that's what I fell in love with. I fell in love with something that, like, man, I still talk to our recruits about it today. I'm like, this game is just going to keep challenging you. Like, no one ever gets to like just conquer it. Like, you're just good every single day. And so it just keeps you coming back for more and asking for more from you, and just fell in love with the process of that. I remember being about like 8 years old, and I actually was like pretty terrible like playing softball, and I think they had like let me come on the all-star team like at Westside Little League, as like basically like the alternate to the alternate, but just to like get experience. I don't think that I actually like played at all. And I remember I remember sitting on the bench. Actually, I think it was your cousin's team because I was young, a little bit younger than her. Anyway, and I remember being like, I never want to feel this feeling again. And in that same token, I think it was like the 2000 Olympics, and just watching them play on TV. And I wanted to be that. And so that kind of just became the goal. And people are like, you really knew at 8 years old? I'm like, I really did. I really did. I fell in love with it. I mean, I still played, I was a multi-sport athlete all the way through high school. I think that's so important to, athletes just in general, like not to specialize too early. It just
Yep.
doing different things. I know you've talked about it a lot. It just creates different coordination and muscle imbalances and all of those things. And just knowing rhythm and timing, different sports create different types of environments for you to learn your body and compete in. So, but yeah, I chased the softball dream hard. I loved playing in high school. I actually was a catcher all the way up until my freshman year. And then we had a catcher on the roster. And so they were like, you're going to go play short. I'm like, I'm really going to go play shortstop. And I kind of made a big deal about it for a little bit. I was kind of like upset that that was what my role was, which I know looking back at it, I'm like, really, Joe? Like, you were still the starting shortstop as a freshman on varsity. Like, so dramatic.
Really? Oh my
Sorry,
gosh.
Stacey and Kevin. We've come a long way since then. But I'm so thankful I did, and I'm forever grateful that they put me over there because it made me just so much more of a versatile athlete. And it's like ironic because the majority of my career in college was spent at shortstop. So even though I was recruited as a catcher, so just kind of goes back to a little. I mean, not to get too far ahead of myself, but just finding the love for what you do, and like it doesn't matter what it looks like, just doing whatever it takes to be out on the field. And that's what I wanted. And so I had some pretty high goals. I knew I wanted to play Division 1 in college, and I didn't get a ton of attention. Again, being from a small town, I played on a small travel ball team, the Chico Stars. Shout out to all the people
Shouts out.
involved. I just so many fond memories. I could do a whole podcast just talking about our memories on the Stars and just the amazing people I got to play with. And you know, image is such a big deal now. Like the age we play in today, it's all about image. It's all about what you look like. It's the film you post. It's, who you beat, and everybody knows the scores. And I think back to our days in travel ball, and I'm like, no one knew anything. No one knew who we were. No one knew like where we came from. Our uniforms were horrible. No one, no one, everybody didn't take us seriously. And then we show up and beat them. So I think I've just kind of always had that underdog mentality. And nothing never goes as you want it to go in the timing, but it always happens in the perfect time. So I actually ended up getting recruited after I graduated my senior year. We were qualifying for nationals in Sunnyvale, California, and Utah State just happened to watch me play, and she was like, yeah, I like her. I want her to come on a visit. And I remember this is also just being very vulnerable moment. I remember getting like the offer to go on a visit, and I remember sitting with one of my other teammates who was committed at the time, Hannah Wagner, on the bench. And we were waiting for to like leave, and I'm crying, and she's like, why are you crying? And I'm like, because it's not UCLA, and that's where I wanted to go.
Always
So
reaching for the stars,
I really
literally.
was. I really was,
Yep.
and anyway, went out there on a visit, and kind of the rest of that is history. But I played for 9 different coaches in my 4 years, so I really learned a lot about adversity. I learned a lot about who I wanted to be and didn't want to be as a coach. And I think towards the end of my career is really when I kind of started to hit more of my stride, just the coaching that I had. And I wish that I would have had them a little bit earlier, but again, you learn so much just from your experience. And I wouldn't take anything back. I loved every minute of playing. I put my heart and soul into it, so I have no regrets looking back at it. I know I gave it everything I had and more. And I wish I could go back and relive it sometimes because they were the best of days, even on the hardest day. I remember just being out there when it's snowing and it's 30 degrees, and you're like, I'm living the dream. This is what I wanted, though. And just being thankful for that opportunity. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about my athletic background. So I'm a proud Aggie, and I root them on still, even though we'll play against them this year, which is crazy. First time I think in my coaching career that I'll play
Wow.
against my alma mater. So
That's wild. Yeah, well, for anyone listening, you can already tell Jo really is kind of like indifferent about softball. She doesn't really like it that much. It's kind of
right.
like, No, she absolutely from day one has been so passionate about softball. I mean, that is like Jo Koons? Oh yeah, she's the softball player. Yeah, like that was the identity. And you embraced it and you were so passionate about every single day showing up on the field, working your hardest and being grateful for the opportunity to do so. And like I remember that about you literally from day one back from playing travel ball and in high school together. So I personally, and I've also been 1 year younger than you, but I've always seen you as a leader. Do you think that you always saw yourself as a leader, or when did you kind of realize that for yourself and think like, huh, maybe I want to be a coach someday?
Yeah, it's interesting in this time with this season, I guess this last month of evolving my career here as a head coach. It's been a good time of reflection because I've been asked a lot of like questions about this. And I grew up and I was like I said, I had older siblings. I had a younger brother also. And so then I had six cousins around his age and younger. So I do feel like in a lot of ways I was naturally the leader because I was who they looked up to. And whether that was good or bad. And like I joke about all the time. I'm like, you guys had a great childhood because you know what? I made it so fun for y'all. And I took the blame for everything. Because when we got in trouble, it was on me because I was the leader, so to speak. I was the oldest one. So I do feel like in a lot of ways, I kind of fell into that coaching role. And I know that that sounds silly, but I'm like, I taught them all how to ride a bike. I taught them all how to skate. I taught them all how to shoot hoops. I tried to teach them all softball. None of them became softball players. So clearly my coaching must have evolved later in my career. um, and I just, like you said, I think I was so passionate about the game. I don't know that I could picture myself doing anything else. One of our teammates, Lauren Kaminsky, she had a younger sister, and her dad asked me to come coach. So I was coaching 10U when I was 14 years old. I loved it. I love being on the field. I love helping them see success. I knew they looked up to me, and I wanted to be a great model for them to model themselves after. So I do feel like in a lot of ways, I was very fortunate to have leadership positions early on. I don't know that I ever saw myself as a true leader until probably around 14, 15. And I realized a lot more people were looking to me. And I think some of that just came naturally from being in that catching position. You're in charge of the field. And so my coaches really pushed me to be that person. I don't know that naturally that's who I was. I was kind of a more quiet kid, except for on the field. I don't know. That was my happy spot, and I could call out the best in people. And I think, being somebody who puts in that work every single day, people respect that, and they would respected me as a leader, and so they were willing to listen to me. And yeah, I think the older I got, the more I just realized, like, hey, it's my job to rally the troops and bring them along. And I remember playing up a level. I was 14 playing with the 18s, and when they started looking to me, I think that's when I really realized, like, oh, okay, like this is my job to do this. Um, and then it kind of just took off from there. I mean, I I never have like looked at it as something bigger than it is. It's just that I want to do my best and be my best self, and bring people around you to do it. I think that's what life is, and that is about people and helping people all be their best. And really, I feel like that's what I'm most passionate about. And it's just the greatest gift that I get to teach my favorite game and bring people along with me to do it. Like, I don't know that I could think of anything better.
Yeah, I love that. And like I said at the beginning, like I I knew this day would come when you finally got the head coach position at a Division 1 ball club. I knew it was coming. It was just like it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. But I know this journey has not been easy, right? It's taken time and you've put in the time and the effort. Like it never stopped. So can you talk a little bit about what that journey was like kind of after graduating and finishing up playing and then the decision to kind of keep going with coaching?
Yeah, for sure. I think everyone's story is so different. I think that's what the beauty of this is. I think it's the beauty of having a podcast like you have to tell the stories, because stories inspire people. And, we all have a story to tell and a different platform that it's going to relate most to people on. And I think it's just so special. So kind of my story, like I said, coming from a small town, I played at a mid-major. We didn't do anything spectacular. I mean, like my one accolade in my career is that I started at all nine positions. Like, woo, that's like pretty cool, but like no one really cares. Um, it's not like I won championships or, was an amazing, superstar athlete. Like I said, I just worked really hard and, made the most out of my career and tried to get the best out of myself. So coming out of college, when you're not one of those people that's nationally recognized, I think your journey's a little bit different just to the start. And I'm not going to say that it's good or bad, but it's definitely more of an underdog mentality. I think, you really have to go in and work hard and prove yourself and learn. And you start at the bottom. So I was fortunate enough. I interviewed for a lot of jobs, a lot of grad assistant jobs. And I ended up like late in the summer getting an email back from the head coach at Stanford. And I wasn't even going to originally email them. My older brother lived in the Bay at the time. He's like, just send him an email. What could it hurt to send him an email? I'm like, you're so dumb. Like, this is not going to happen, whatever. And it didn't for like a month. And then she randomly emailed me back and she's like, I'm interested in you. Like, would love for you to come on campus. Or she called me and then she's like, I'd love for you to come on campus. And so yeah, I was fortunate enough that Rachel Hansen, she took a chance on me. And I still remember like walking around the campus at Stanford and being just like, am I really going to come coach Pac-12 athletes? Like this is real life. But man, such a humbling experience. You think you know softball until you get to the other side of it. And then you're like, yep, I actually know nothing about the game I've been playing my entire life. So I was really fortunate to have, herself, Rachel and Dory and Shaw. And, I still talk to them today. Dorian's still in coaching. Rachel's out of it now, but I still call Dorian, every couple of weeks and we, debrief all the things. And she taught me so much and just took me under her wing and, showed me kind of the ropes of what things would look like. And I was the volunteer there. I guess I should preface that. So like really wasn't making any money. Like truly was just there to get experience. And you live in the Bay Area. So like, hello, you're really not making money because you're just like trying to pay rent to survive. So I rented like a room from a Spanish professor on campus that like lived near campus. So here I am with all these Spanish speaking individuals hanging out in my like one bedroom, eating my like goldfish at 9 o'clock at night. So the grind was real. The grind was real. And then I ended up going to get my master's at Colorado Christian the following year. So kind of same situation. I think people real like it's just such a different world. And I say that and it was only like 8 years ago. And, we were living off $500 a month and we were giving lessons and just trying to make ends meet in Denver and pay rent. And same thing, we're eating our goldfish and, living at the calf and just trying to survive, just trying to make it. And then I got offered a head coaching position at Lassen College, which is just a JUCO up the road and in California. And that was a great experience. I mean, really my only true head coaching experience before, taking this job. And again, just such a different perspective, different levels teach you different things, So I've been at the top of the top in the Pac-12. I was at a D2 out in Colorado. Then I was at a, JUCO here at Lassen and you just make things work. I think those kids, they taught me so much because they weren't on scholarship. They were truly just playing because they wanted to play. And I just found such a purity in that. And that's really what this is all about at the end of the day. And, our dynamic in our game has shifted so much. And I tell athletes every single day, I'm like, play because you want to play the game, not because of what the game will give you, but because of what you give it. The game will give you things in return, but that's not why you should play it. And sorry, slight tangent, but I'm very passionate about that.
We love tangents. No, it's okay.
I'm really passionate about that part.
We're a tangent podcast.
Yeah. And so after Lassen, I had the opportunity to go back to my alma mater and coach, which was really special. There's nothing quite like going back to your alma mater. I mean, you're just so proud. I mean, that is where you spent so much of your time. It's such a key part of your life was, in those 4 years. So I really had no intentions of leaving my alma mater. Late in the summer, I had ran into Megan Langenfeld, who I work with at Stanford, and she's like, hey, do you want to come be our volunteer at Oregon? And I was like, haha, you're funny. Like, that's not happening. And then she reached out to me a couple days later and she's like, no, like for real, like Coach Lombardi wants to call you. And I was like, okay, yeah, like I'll take her call. And, I got on the phone with her and she's like, so do you want to be a duck? And I just remember being like, yeah, no, I guess I'm going to be a duck. So, yeah, so I kind of went reversal of roles, which everybody was really confused at. Like I was a full-time assistant at Utah State, and then I was taking a pay cut, to go be a volunteer again. But At the time, I just thought it was so important. I thought she had so much experience she could teach me. I mean, obviously, she came from Oklahoma, which is one of the most dominant programs in the country. And, I knew I was going to work with Justin Schultz and Megan again. And I just thought it would be invaluable experience and so be worth it. So, again, just making barely any money and going up to be the volunteer. And, through that time, obviously, COVID hit. So that was just another crazy aspect to it. So I obviously wasn't getting paid and I was driving to Sacramento and giving lessons and trying to run things. So you were just like everybody else, you're in survival mode, which was just character building again, like a lot of ups and downs, but they all add to your story. And it's really special now because a lot of those kids I gave lessons to, some are playing in college, some are about to play in college. I ran into a mom this past weekend and she's just like, Jen, thank you so much for what you did for my daughter. And that's what matters, like that's the stuff, like it doesn't feel like it in the moment. And it's like, I'm really going to go drive an hour and a half to give 6 lessons and drive an hour and a half back. Like it was not a fun time, but hindsight's always 2020. It's like totally worth it to grow the game and to help athletes become their best self. And yeah, so from there I took a job out in Virginia. Kind of that wasn't really planned. Went out there. So I've been coast to coast now, West Coast, East Coast, really just building those recruiting ties, which no one tells you when you get into this, but like it's so important, relationship building of who you're around, what you're doing. And I think back now and I'm like, yeah, I had no chance to be recruited. Let's be real. No one had any relationship with the good old Chico team. Which again, everything happens for a reason, but it's just such a different dynamic, such a different dynamic. And now feel like I have so much knowledge to help other people so they can be successful even when they're from small areas. So yeah, from Virginia, I took a job out in Texas and I was at UTA for 2 years, kind of building the program there and love Texas. It's a great spot. It's kind of like the best of both worlds. You have great recruiting, you got great weather, you're in the middle of the country, so you can go to either side pretty quickly. And I really came to enjoy that piece of it and, jumped 2 feet in and just worked really hard to build kind of the program ETA. And I really, again, never had any intentions of leaving necessarily. ACU kind of came and sought me out and, it happened all so fast from there and just knew when I stepped on campus that this is where I was supposed to be and just being around administration who would let me be my true self and would support that and wanted me to bring that to who they are as a, department, but, as well as the team itself, just to lead them. So I feel really humbled and excited and, just like ready to get to work. Although there's like so much work before we're ready to get to work. So working on that.
The pre-work before the
Correct,
work. Yeah.
correct.
And so now, just to be very crystal clear for everyone, you are now the head softball coach for
Abilene Christian University. Yep, it's in West Texas. It's about 2 hours west of Dallas, and then like the next big town I would say down the road is Lubbock. So kind of in the middle of the large state of Texas, if you will.
Yeah. And so this is like I'm just listening to you and listening to this story and like I've been following along like as you've been popping around all these places. But like did you ever get to a point where you wanted to give up? And if you did or didn't, like what kept you going?
Yeah. It's easy to say like all this sounds so great, like, oh, you did this and this and this and this. I can tell you it's not been easy. So yeah, there was definitely a year in there for sure when I was like, this is not it. And I don't know if this is what I really want to do with my life. But you know what? As much as I thought about it and people tried to push one way or the other, I'm like, I really can't imagine myself doing anything else. Like, I think that certain people certain people love to explore, certain people know exactly what they want to do. And I think I'm one of those people, like, this is what I was like called to do for more or less. Like, I'm passionate about it. It still excites me every day. I mean, there's challenges every single day. You're dealing with people. Like, of course, there's going to be ups and downs and, you know, things that you can't control. But again, I think it's kind of the same thing as like the game itself. Like it's the challenge that makes it great and the reward on the other side. It looks different every time, but it's always worth it. And so what kept me going, I have some incredible people in my life who would just speak encouragement into me and be like, Joe, like, I don't think that's it. Like, this is not, what are you going to do if you just give up? So really appreciative for those people. And um, I think that I kind of just live my life like that. And I hope to inspire other people to live your life like that. That, if you give everything you have and you don't give what you want, then it is what it is. But I don't want to look back and know that I could have given more or I could have tried one more time and then have to live with that. And I mean, it's so silly to say it out loud, but if you truly make choices every day to live like that, like you're gonna be successful and you're gonna like get more from life than you even thought you would. And sometimes, the easy decisions aren't always the right decisions, and usually the hard decisions are, and the ones you don't want to do. And I mean, something silly, even just the other day, I was out recruiting in California a couple days ago, and I was supposed to fly back on Tuesday. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think I can do that. Like, I think I need to stay and watch these kids a couple more times. And everyone's like, Joe, it's fine. You don't need to do that. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, nope, I think I do need to do it. So I end up staying till Thursday to watch them. And whether I get the athletes or not that I want, like, I can look back and know, like, well, I did my due diligence and I stayed and I have no regrets. Like, I know I gave it everything I had to, like, try to get them. So, yeah, I think that's really like the motivating factor, what keeps coming back. And then just the athletes themselves. I mean, this game goes far, beyond two pairs of white lines at the end of the day. Like, it's the platform, but it's not the end goal. And so getting to watch my athletes get married and have kids and, still have relationships with a lot of them. Now that I have my own staff, I just hired one of my former athletes on my staff. Like, it's just such a cool, like, full circle moment. And to know that, I made some difference in her life, that she wanted to come work on my staff. Like, that's one of the most fulfilling things that I've ever experienced. And, even just my teammates, I'm on a podcast talking to you, but it's like everybody's gone in such different directions, but like the game will always bring us back together. And I think that's just the beauty of the sport itself and athletics itself, is that, nothing can take away those memories and the times you experience together, and the highs and the lows and the good and the bad. Like, I mean, we have those things forever, and we'll go back and we'll laugh about it and cry about it probably sometimes. But it is truly what makes it great. So yeah, just not willing to be able to give up any of those things.
I love that so much. Yeah, and that really, I mean, hits deep for me too, and that's the game of softball. And I think, athletics in general, they just bring you together with people and have an impact on lives in so many different ways. Yeah. So, I mean, listening to you, like the theme that I get, like throughout this podcast, but just in throughout knowing you, is like this refusal to give up and this like insane work ethic. I see that as one of the main or some of the main qualities that make you such a good leader. But I'm curious to hear to you, what do you think are like qualities of a good leader and why?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing is just like lead by example. Like, what do you want? What do you want your people to see in you? And that is because that's what they're going to emulate, and you are who you're around. They say that, I think that's a statistic. Like, you become who your like five closest friends are,
Yeah.
because that's who you surround yourself with. So if I'm leading people, I want to know, who am I to them, and what is my example to them, because that's what they're going to follow. That's what they're going to know. Um, yeah, work ethic's a huge one. I don't know any other way to do it. People tell me all the time, you work so hard and blah blah blah, but I'm like, I don't see it like that. Like, yes, I know I work hard, but to me it's just that's all I've ever known. So it's hard for me to like take a break. But I think that if I'm the hardest worker in the room, it just inspires them to work hard. And I'm not saying they need to outwork me. Like, I think that is my job as a leader, like, not to be outworked. But to just set the culture of what hard work looks like. But I would say one of the biggest things about being a leader is just connecting with the people you're leading. I think everybody wants to be seen. They want to be known. They want to be loved. They want to have the best call out in them, and they want to be challenged. And so it's kind of figuring out those pieces, through their stories, of how to best get that out of them, and to get in there with them, and to be in the hunt, to be in the build with them, and then pull those things out of them. I mean, so much about leadership is just sharing life with people and pouring into them, encouraging them, challenging them. I talk a lot about love, and that's kind of one of my core values. in the program that I have, but it really just in my life, I think, it's like this unconditional love for the opportunity you have every day, for the people you're around, the people you need to show love to, and for whatever you're doing. Like it's such a gift, and love itself is like it builds you, it it breaks you at times. Love is the hard conversations, love is the encouraging conversations, love is a hug, love is a phone call. Like there's so many different ways to demonstrate love, but it all comes back to making sure that if your people feel loved, you're going to get the most out of them all the time. And so that's probably my biggest thing that I try to do as a leader. And of course, you want to demonstrate all the other characteristics as well. But man, if people know you love them, they're going to run through a wall for you. And just being in all the experiences that I have and all the staffs that I've worked on, and I can tell you that it's much easier to want to work really hard for someone like actually cares about you,
Yep.
even if just a little bit. And so if I can care about them more than a little bit, surely I'm going to get more out of them. And it's not easy. I'm not saying that loving everybody is like kumbaya, like let's all go sit by the fire and sing. That's not real life. Like people have different personalities. We all see the world a little bit differently. We don't have to agree on everything, but you have to agree to work towards the common goal. For us, obviously that's, winning softball games, but for people, it's all different things. But like I said, you don't have to agree on everything and love everything about every single person to, have a conversation with them to try to get them to be their best. That's kind of my perspective on it.
Yes. Gosh. And everybody listening, Jo is the real deal. Like sometimes Jo and I go like probably a year without talking, or months at least. Every single year on my birthday, she is one of the first to text me and say happy birthday and tell me how much she loves me and how much light and love I bring to the world, and like just to lift me up. And I am not kidding. It's like every year it hits and I'm like, oh God, man, I love that woman. It just, you practice what you preach. So we're going to start wrapping up here a little bit. And I think like we've already touched on some really awesome points, but this next question that I have for you, we've got a lot of people listening who are former athletes, and we all have different experiences with coaches. And I think that you lead such a wonderful example for your athletes. I'm wondering what is something that I mean, love is a big one, obviously, but what is something else that you want your athletes to feel or want them to know as they go through sport?
Yeah. Love for sure. I think accountability is one, definitely. The need to take responsibility for what I did wrong or what I did right or what I should be doing or what I, know I didn't do, I think is a big one. I think it's really easy to try to place the blame on somebody else. It's really easy for somebody to justify the actions that you did. It's easy to say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I mean, all of that goes in sport, of course, but that also goes to life. Like knowing, you're going to go into the workplace somewhere. And if I tell my athletes, like, you need to be there at, 9:15 and they show up at 9:20, like, and I let that slide, like, that's not holding anybody to a standard. And so, because that's not going to translate in the real world. Like you do that, you're going to be fired. And that's like a silly example, but I think accountability is just a huge thing. And that goes back to self-reflection, to wanting to, continue to be great and in your life, not just going with the status quo. I think that's probably the hardest thing when you're out of that team environment, is to clearly keep yourself motivated to whatever your goal may be, whether that's, athletically, whether that's your career, relationally, spiritually, whatever you decide that is. I think when you're not in that environment where everyone is holding each other accountable, like, are you disciplined enough to do that? And, so much of accountability, discipline, I kind of run them in the same, arenas, but sport teaches you all those things. And so I think every day you have a choice. We make a million choices a day, and every choice has a consequence, good or bad. So are you disciplined enough to make the right choice, even if it's a hard choice, multiple times a day? And we're not all going to be perfect. Like it doesn't happen, obviously. But I think, in the grand scheme of life, like what are you doing? Because your choices reflect your character, and your character reflects your destiny and who you're going to become. So, that's a big one for me. And then probably the other thing I would say beyond love is just communication. I think we live in a world that's really hard to communicate. We all hide behind a screen, behind a phone. It's easy to text. I don't even know that kids love to, have a phone call anymore. They rather FaceTime, which is hilarious to me. And the FaceTime is like up at the ceiling. I'm like, so why are we even FaceTime if I'm not going to see your face? Like it's just, it's fascinating. Culture is fascinating. Uh, but yeah, teaching them good communication skills. I mean, whether that's with me and them or their teammates, I think a big piece of that is, there is some confrontation involved. And I think when I'm put in that leadership role, like it does give you a sense of, yeah, I have like a respect for them, and I need to carry myself a certain way. So teaching them what that looks like, and then obviously teaching them how to have those confrontational conversations with one another. And confrontation doesn't always have to be negative. I think that's such a poor connotation to it. I think it really can be if you approach it the correct way. And I think the more you practice it, the more you normalize it, the less confrontational it even becomes. It just becomes a conversation. So I think that's a big piece, just teaching them how to communicate early and often as best as they can. It just sets you up for success in the long run.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. So, in that same kind of tune, what is something that you, either looking back at yourself, wish that you kept in mind as you were finishing sport and going into life after sport? Or what is something that you want your athletes to keep in mind as they transition?
Yeah. It's a good question. I would probably say two things. The first is just because it's over doesn't mean you have to forget it. You can still practice the principles that you learn within it. I think it's really easy to a lot of athletes, I'm fortunate enough to stay in it every day. So, I have to stay sharp because this is a life that I continue to live, and the craziness and all of the things that I continue to show up for. Um, but I think it's easy for you to lose the all that you learned because it's just like, oh, well, I don't have to do that anymore. No one's telling me to do that. Kind of back to that choices piece. So I would hope that my athletes take that with them in life. And I'm not saying the intensity has to be up here like it is in college athletics, but that they can find something that works for them. That's a balance, if you will, that they can carry with them. And probably looking back at myself, and something that I continue to strive to work on daily is the difference of being hard on yourself and not down on yourself. I think it's really easy. I am actually the number one, and Tori played with me, so you played with me, and I'm sure my teammates just love this so much about me. I'm very hard on myself. I have very high expectations. I want to be the best at everything I do, on the field, off the field. And when you don't achieve those things, it's so easy to get down on yourself. And there's a difference. Like you can be hard on yourself and still succeed and still move through life and, have those expectations. But man, when you start getting down on yourself, you start this downward spiral, and it's like a whole cycle. And then you just like hate life for a little bit, and then you like cycle out of it. But it's just a lot, a lot harder place to live in. And, so that's something I'm always constantly working on. I think now, you know, post sport, I wish that I would have had it a little bit earlier in my career, my playing career. Uh, but hindsight again is always 2020. And I think that is why I was so great, is because I kept coming back to, I always wanted to be better. And I think now I am the same. I just try to avoid the spiral a little bit more because I can talk to myself and be like, hey, okay, we get it. Like you're upset, but we don't need to like go down the deep dark hole. Just take the feedback for what it is and show up again tomorrow and be better. So I think that that's really the difference. I think just being able to like kind of, break that down, file it away, and learn and grow from it, and not just like let it ruminate.
Yeah, it's kind of like the difference between like having a growth mindset towards something and being like, all right, I'm going to take that and learn from a failure, rather than falling into like the habit of perfectionism and being like super hard on yourself and it's not good unless it's perfect. There's a difference, and you can still take feedback and fail and do better with that without, like you said, taking that downward spiral. So yeah, that's huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Anything else that you think that athletes should know as they go into life after sport? We kind of touched a lot of good stuff there.
Mm. Yeah. Keep competing. Hey, whatever way you can find a way to compete, whether that's, slow pitch, board games, I don't know, with yourself, CrossFit, I don't know. I think it's good. Yeah. I think it's good for your brain. I really do. I will say I think that's why part of coaching is so fun because I still have that competitive outlet. And I think a lot of like things can be solved if you just have a little bit of a, a way to get that out of you because it's obviously instilled in you. And so I don't know. Sometimes I feel like when you get out of sport, that just gets completely shut down and it turns into other things that you don't need in your life. So finding ways to like still being able to compete and kind of experience that bit of camaraderie in whatever, sense that it may be, I think is important.
Yeah. That Orange Theory competition,
Hey, my Orange Theory people, say goodbye to them this morning. I may or may not have shed a tear or two.
Oh,
Sad.
it is sad. But I
Yeah,
agree what you said. Like I think it is really important to find that and to realize that like that edge is still there and you can apply it to other arenas. And it's so much fun when you do. You're like, oh yeah, like
100%.
I am an athlete still. Like it's still
Yeah.
there. It's still there.
Yeah, yeah. I think it helps too because you don't like push that on other people. I mean, maybe in my line of work, but kind of that leadership piece of like, I'm so competitive. I'm like, can you guys just be a little bit more competitive? But if I have an outlet to release my competitiveness, I can better teach and like pull that out of them instead of put my expectations on them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up here. We've talked about a lot of amazing things today. I'm so happy I got to pick your brain and we got to do this because I think this is such a good episode and people are gonna take so much good stuff away from this. Is there anything else that has been on your mind or that you want people to know that are listening to this podcast?
I think probably the biggest thing is just like find joy in wherever you're at, work hard. There's gonna be the journey is the journey. There is no end destination. So just take it as it comes, be proactive, set some goals. If it doesn't work out, like there's gonna be another avenue. Kind of what I said back at the beginning. Not everything comes in the timing that you want, but it always comes at the right time. So just continue to put in the work and don't give up. I mean, whatever it is that you're thinking about doing or you might want to do, or who knows, there are always new dreams. Like new dreams are always coming for people, and don't lose sight of any of those things. I think that's probably my biggest message. Like there's always a purpose bigger than what we see in front of us. There's a bigger lens. So don't lose hope. Life is a journey for a reason.
Yep. That's a good place to end, I think. Jo, if people want to connect with you or like follow ACU and your season this year, how can they stay in touch or get in touch with you?
Yeah, ACU softball itself, it's on Twitter, or I guess it's called X now. It's on X and Instagram and Facebook. I'm on all three of those platforms as well. I think Jo Koons or, at Coach Koons, one of those handles, if you will. But yeah, would love to bring anybody on the journey that they can with us. I think, it's so fun. The journey is more fun when you get to share with people. So I'm super excited about it. So thankful that you're one of my people always following this crazy journey that I've been on. And it just keeps getting better. So we'll see what we can do this year.
Absolutely. Go Wildcats, right?
That's right.
Yes, let's go. I'm so excited for you, Jo. This has been so awesome. Thank you so much for taking time. You literally just moved and you're taking on this new head coach role and you're super busy and you made time to be here. Love you so much.
Hey, always here. Appreciate you. I love you. And so thankful for you.
All right. That is it for today. If you liked today's episode, please go and leave us a review. Share this episode with someone who you think might enjoy it. Show Jo some love here. And I will see you all, or hear you all, or you will hear me. I still haven't figured out how to say that yet. On the next episode. Take care, everybody.